Today we're going to be looking at the semester review for our geometry exam. If you take a look at the first question, it says, what is the converse of the following statement? Remember that a converse flips your hypothesis and conclusion. So the statement, if a triangle is a right triangle, then it has an angle measuring 90 degrees. The statement is going to be flipped when I see that converse. And I should see something like, if it is an angle measuring 90 degrees, then a triangle is a right triangle. And if I look at my answer choices, answer choice A has the word not in it. Answer choice B has a not in it, so we're negating those two. Answer choice C says, if a triangle has an angle measuring 90 degrees, then it is a right triangle. That's the one we're looking for. So answer choice C is our converse. If you're looking at question number 2, one end of a segment has the coordinates -5, 12. The midpoint of the segment is 2, 9, and I want to know what are the coordinates of the other end point of the segment. I would use that point -5, 12 as my x1, y1, and I would use my midpoint formula and maybe use my answer choices to help me out. My midpoint formula says that I'm going to take my x1 and x2, add them together, divide by 2, take my y1 and y2, add them together, divide by 2, and that's how I will find the midpoint. The answer I'm looking for is this point 2, 9. If I'm looking at my answer choices, I want to add two numbers together, divide by 2, and get a whole number 2. So I probably don't want to add fractions. I would probably eliminate those and take a look at these two answer choices in the middle. So I'm going to check using answer choice B. If B is my answer, that means that I'm going to take -5 plus -9 divided by 2, and I'm going to take 12 plus -6 divided by 2, and I want it to equal 2, 9. When I take -5 plus -9, that's going to give me a -14 divided by 2 is going to give me a -7. So I don't want that answer. If I look at answer choice C and I use those values, I'm going to have my -5 plus 9 divided by 2, and I'm going to use my 12 plus 6 divided by 2. When I choose those answers, -5 plus 9, that's going to give me a +4. When I divide by 2, I get my 2. My 12 plus 6, that's 18. When I divide by 2, I'm going to get my 9. And so using my answer choices and working my problem out backwards gives me the correct answer for that problem. When I look at problem number 3, if M is the midpoint of segment AB, then which statement is false? If I know I have a midpoint, that means if I've got a segment going from A to B, M is exactly in the middle, and this half of the segment and this half of the segment are congruent. That's the definition of midpoint. So question number A says the length from A to B divided by 2 equals MB. That's a true statement. Segment AM is the length is equal to the length of segment MB. That's another true statement. So I can eliminate those two answer choices. Answer choice C says if I take all of AB and I subtract MB, I end up with AM. That's a true statement. And the last answer choice says if I take segment from A to M and I add it to all of A to B, I end up with this part. And you know that's definitely going to be false. If I look at question number 4, question number 4 says I've got points A, B, C, and D. They're on a coordinate plane, and I want to know if segment AB is congruent to segment CD. So I need to find the length. Length means I need to use my distance formula. My distance formula says I'm going to subtract the x's, square them, subtract the y's, square them, and add those two things together. So if I'm looking at that distance formula, first I want to take my x2 minus my x1, square it, add it to my y2 minus my y1, square it, I get a number, and my second step, I square root my number to get my answer. I need to do that for AB to find its length and for CD to find its length. So if I'm looking at my answer choices, either I'll get a no because they're not equal, or I'll get a yes because they are equal. I'm looking at AB and CD, so I don't care anything about AC, and I definitely have enough information to solve that problem. So if I'm taking a look at what is the length of segment AB, I'm going to take my values for A and B. I'm going to take my 0 minus negative 3 squared plus my y values, 3 minus 2 squared, and I'm going to put that in my calculator and get a number. When I punch that in my calculator, parentheses 0 minus negative 3 close squared plus parenthesis 3 minus 2 close squared, I end up with 10. So the distance of AB is the square root of 10. I need to do the same thing with segment CD and see what my value will be. When I take the points for C and D, I'm going to take the y values, or x values first, sorry, 2 minus negative 1 closed squared, plus my y values, negative 3 minus negative 2 closed squared. And again, I put that in my calculator to see what I get. Parenthesis 2 minus negative 1 close squared plus parenthesis negative 3 minus negative 2 close squared. And again, I get that number 10. So I know that the length of CD is also the square root of 10. Since the length of AB is equal to the length of CD, I know that I have a yes, segment AB's length is equal to segment CD's length. If I look at question number 5, it says to use deductive reasoning to complete the following. The sum of the angles of any triangle is 180 degrees. In triangle PQR, the measure of angle Q is 80 degrees. Therefore, what do I know? I know that if I take the 180 minus 80, I get 100 degrees. So I know that P and R together have to add up to 100 degrees. Answer choice A says that the measure of angle P and the measure of angle R equals 100 degrees. That looks like what I want. Answer choice B says that the measure of angle P is 50 and the measure of angle R is 50. And that would be possible if they told me that my triangles were isosceles. But they don't tell me that information, so that's really not necessary. Answer choice C says that P and R are 102 degrees. That doesn't make any sense. And answer choice D says I'm adding P and Q together. I already know Q, so that doesn't make any sense. So answer choice A is going to be your best choice for that question. If I look at question number 6, the statement is given below. If a ray intersects a segment at its midpoint, then the ray is perpendicular to the segment. I want to know which figure provides a counterexample to that given statement. So I'm looking for a ray that is not perpendicular. So I'm looking for a ray that is not perpendicular. That would be a counterexample. Answer choice A is a ray that is perpendicular. I don't want that. Answer choice B looks good. If I check my other answers, notice that answer choice C is not a ray. This is a segment. So I can't use that as a counterexample even though it's not perpendicular. And answer choice D shows a line, or you could consider it 2 rays, but they are perpendicular. So the one that gives me a ray that is not perpendicular is going to be answer choice B. I have to have both of those conditions. If I look at question number 7, it says in the diagram shown below, the lines K, M, and N are parallel, and the question wants me to know which of the following must be true. I think it's easier if I try to color code what I see and figure out what do I know about my angles, because they're asking me questions about which angles are congruent to each other. I know that when I have parallel lines, all of the acute angles are congruent to each other, and all of the obtuse angles are congruent to each other, and together they add up to 180. So I know that if I'm looking at angle 1 and angle 4, they're congruent, angle 5, angle 8, angle 9, and angle 12. So you might even want to list what ones you've got there are congruent. Angle 1, angle 4, angle 5, angle 8, angle 9, angle 12. Those are all congruent to each other. And the other angles you didn't list, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, and 11, are all congruent to each other. So if I'm looking to say what must be true, is 2, the measure of angle 2, going to be the same as the measure of angle 8? No, because 8's one of these and 2 is one of those. So definitely not answer choice 1. Is the measure of angle 1 going to equal the measure of angle 5? Yes, they're 2 of the ones that I wrote down here. Question statement 3, is the measure of angle 3 going to be equal to the measure of angle 11? Yes, because there's 2 of the ones I didn't write down there. So I'm looking at the fact that statement 2 and statement 3 are true. When I look at my answer choices, 1 only, I don't want that. 1 and 2, I don't want that. 2 and 3, that's what I want. Not 1, 2, and 3. So check the statements first before you go to the answer choices.